Well, this is starting to play out now. For months, I've been discussing on shows what I believe to be massive exposure by the U.S. pension system to private equity and the private credit markets. I've explained why it poses a real threat to people that are now relying on pensions for existing income, but even more importantly, those relying on pensions for their future retirement income. So for years, millions of Americans have been sold this pitch and this story that public pensions, by investing billions of dollars into private equity, could earn higher returns, reduce their funding gaps, and secure the retirement savings for teachers, firefighters, police officers, and other public employees. So that is turning out now in a big way to not be true. The Pennsylvania Public School Employees Retirement System, known as, I guess it's PSERS or PSERS, is responsible for the retirement security of more than 500,000 teachers, school employees, retirees, and beneficiaries of the pension funds. It's not a small fund. They manage roughly $85 billion in assets, and they pay billions of dollars in retirement benefits each year. From what I have read, it's one of the largest public pension systems actually in the United States. So on the 4th of July, a story was released by the Williamsport Sun Gazette. Definitely not headline news, and none of the big organizations picked it up. A couple other ones picked it up. I saw another one called Trib Live. As it turns out, and what the story reveals is the Pennsylvania's Public School Employees Pension Fund is $41 billion short of what it needs to pay out promised benefits. Last year, it says it missed the retirement benchmark that officials had set, and the reason they said that it missed it was due to the performance within private equity. So according to the pension system's own investment results, the biggest drag on performance last year wasn't stocks, it wasn't bonds, it wasn't real estate, it was private equity. Don't forget, please, to hit subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed. And if you want to learn more about my risk map newsletter, I'll leave a link in the description below. You can go check that out. So PSERS invested $10.1 billion, if you can believe it, in private equity with a goal, it says, of returning 10.06%. You know what it returned? 2.59%. According to PSERS, private equity reduced the fund's overall return by almost a six-tenths of a percentage point more than any other asset class, meaning its private equity investments were the single largest negative contributor among all of its major asset classes. $41 billion shortfall, folks, is more than a rounding error. And guess who's going to foot the bill? The story says, and according to this, Leonard Gilroy, Senior Managing Director of the Pension Fund Integrity Project for the Reason Foundation, Pennsylvania taxpayers, he says, will ultimately bear much of the cost as the state spends more to keep its promises to the fund's 500,000 members. So the taxpayers are going to pick up the tab for the bad decisions that the pension fund managers made getting into billions of dollars of private equity investments. This was not just an outlier miss here. According to the reporting, private equity was the only one of their 8 asset classes to miss the benchmark, not just for 1 year, but over the 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year, and 15-year periods. So what have they done about it? Well, albeit probably years too late, they say they now have begun reducing their exposure to private equity. So their private equity holdings have fallen from approximately $12.2 billion to $10.1 billion. And private equity's share of the overall portfolio now, they say, has fallen from 16.3% to 11.8%. So at one point, they had darn near close to 20% of the pension fund's portfolio invested in private equity, right? The groups of zombie companies that produce no revenues and no returns and can't be sold. And the fund's chief investment officer said they've been selling exposure to the funds in the secondary markets as part of reducing the allocation. I've covered the secondary market sales on the channel. I think about a week or two ago I did a show on that. So they're not just slowing new investments, they're selling off their existing positions into the secondaries. And this is not limited, folks, to Pennsylvania. That's why this story should be getting national attention. According to the same reporting, pension systems in at least 6 other states have also reduced their private equity exposure over the past year. Those include Alaska, Maine, Washington, Ohio, Nevada, and Virginia. Last year, Alaska's pension investment officials wrote the key drivers behind private equity's so-called golden era have reversed. So the easy money environment we've talked about that fueled these leveraged buyouts for more than a decade is gone. And what's happening is the equity funds or the private equity companies are sitting on massive amounts of zombie companies and zombie assets that they say they're managing and taking management fees for doing so, but they can't sell and they're generating no returns. As I've previously told you guys on shows, these private equity managers do not buy up all of these assets, if you can call them that, with cash. They also borrow heavily. Then they refinance. Then they recapitalize. And then, of course, we've been covering the private equity fund managers and the general partners take big fat dividends and management fees along the way. I just did a show a couple days ago on the Aspen Dental Group that over the years has sucked $1 billion of dividends out through recapitalizations, and now the fund cannot pay its debts. The private equity fund can't pay its debts, and the lenders and, of course, the investors are scrambling. So in this case, the investor is the Pennsylvania Pension Fund. They stand behind the private equity fund managers and then even behind that, the lenders. They're last in line. So you see where this is all heading. And I think from my perspective, it's only the beginning. You have proof right here that one of America's largest public pension systems is effectively saying that private equity has caused it to be left billions short of its funding obligations. And this should matter to everybody, folks, who either relies on or plans on relying on a public pension either now or in the future. It's not limited to just public pensions. This is happening across the board. I've been covering it. So public pension systems, just so you know, collectively oversee trillions of dollars for teachers, police officers, firefighters, state workers, and many of those have increased over the years their exposure to private equity. But the assumption that stood behind private equity is imploding. Okay, folks, there's no higher returns. There's no safer investment here. As we can see, the consequences are now unfolding in Pennsylvania, but they're going to unfold across the country as you start blowing up. It's going to become a national story because the retirement security of millions of people, okay, depends on whether these institutional investment decisions have proven to be right or profoundly wrong. And unfortunately, I think it's going to turn out to be the latter. Look, before the housing crisis, pension funds were comfortable owning highly rated mortgage securities because the sophisticated professionals believed that the risks were manageable, as we all know how that ended. So I'll keep covering this. If you enjoy the content, leave me a like. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Go check out the Risk Map newsletter. Leave me your thoughts and comments. With that being said, I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks.